Welcome, everybody. This is Tom Sega from Duluth Pack, and this is Leader of the Pack, the Duluth Pack podcast. And I got to tell you, I am so excited for our guest today. I just have not been able to stand myself for days. We have Alex Messenger. And I'm going to do a little reading before we actually introduce you, Alex, because this is pretty epic, folks. You got to listen to this. Alex Messenger is a Duluth, Minnesota author, marketer, and photographer who at 17 was mauled by a grizzly bear. I'm not going to stop there, but I'm going to take a quick pause. Alex and I have known each other professionally and seen each other at trade shows and around the country for years. And not once has Alex ever told me, hey, Tom, I was mauled by a grizzly bear. And when I found this out, it was like, I got to get a hold of you. We have got to talk about this. Then I bought his book and read it. And I credit this guy with having my wife ticked off at me at 2 a.m. when I wouldn't put the book down in bed, because this thing is epic. So we're going to talk about the book. We're going to talk about your adventure, because that's part of the podcast is all about people with adventures, and you're an adventurer. But let me finish reading this. In the decades since, he has worked as a wilderness guide and a volunteer search and rescue operator. His love of adventure, nature, and cultures has taken him all over the globe, but the North Woods and canoe country have always been among his favorite subjects. His work has appeared in the New York Times, Men's Journal, National Parks Magazine, Outside Online, and Backpacker Magazine. His website is alexmessenger.com. Welcome, Alex. This is so epic. I can't wait to dive into the meat and potatoes here.
Thanks for having me, Tom. It's really exciting to be here to talk about this crazy adventure with another fellow adventurer and a fellow Duluthian here. So I'm really excited.
Oh, you know what? We could go on for days. So let's get started here.
Yeah.
And let's first talk about a little bit about your history, because you just didn't start. 17 years old is what we're going to talk about today, the 29th day, your book, what happened on that, the whole adventure. But you actually started as an adventurer because of your family a lot earlier.
That's right. Yeah, I was really lucky. I grew up in the Twin Cities in Minnesota here, and my parents are the ones who really introduced me and my sister into this world of adventure and travel and these crazy experiences. They were both teaching anthropology when I was young, and they, in their prior years, had done like field work in Central America, doing archaeological expeditions and things in the jungle. And by the time my sister and I came around, they were teaching, and so we got to go on these study abroad trips with them for a month every year, where we'd go to foreign countries and explore the ancient cultures and the modern cultures there, and just really be put out of our comfort zones and experience some pretty amazing things, especially for being that young. And so we started out with that when I was 3. That was my first international trip with them and all these students. And not long after that, we started doing some trips closer to home as well, and then eventually going to the Boundary Waters with them. They were humble enough to know that they needed to learn from other people who had been there before, and got the gear that we needed to get out there, and went out into the Boundary Waters, and that was just a whole nother type of adventure, and my love of that wild place was just it started right then, and it hasn't stopped.
And 2.5 hours from home too. You didn't have to go all the way across the world for it.
Right, exactly. Which was really cool, and it became a summer, a ritual of every summer that we'd go there and learn something in every trip, and just sort of get better at exploring this amazing resource right within our own home state.
And then you moved 2.5 hours north to get closer.
Yeah, exactly.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So, but before that,
Yeah.
you're still living at home in the Twin Cities,
Yep.
and you start going to a camp.
Yeah.
which we're very familiar with here as Camp Minojan.
Yep. Yeah. YMCA Camp Minojan. My parents, again, they understood kind of where I was at and that this would be a good thing for me, and signed me up for the 8-day session, which was a Boundary Waters trip. And I was kind of on the fence about it when I started. But once I got there and we got on trail, it was just like a paradigm shift for me. We'd, like I said, been going to the Boundary Waters for a long time, and I had a fair amount of experience, but it was just totally different to be learning from professionals, to be learning alongside my peers, how to properly portage, how to make amazing food in the backcountry, on these minuscule stoves and pots and pans and everything, and how to paddle a canoe really well. So my skills just took off as soon as I started working with Minojan, and it was just amazing to learn with them and to grow with them. So I started going back.
What year was
after
your first year there?
So, well, I'll work backwards. So OMS was 2005, and that's what we're spending a lot of time on today.
Yep.
And then the year before that was a month-long trip, Northwestern, 2004. And then 2003 was Quetico. And then 2002 would have been this 8-day session.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Building up to the bigger ones every year.
Exactly.
As you get more age, more experience, and
Yep.
get to know more people that are at the camp.
Yeah, exactly. And every time we're with a different group of people, so it's not that, you're always with the same people. I mean, there was a fair amount of overlap, especially as you get into the longer trips. But I think one of the really cool things is getting to experience these trips with people that you maybe don't know as well. You get to just learn how to work well with a very broad group of people.
New life experiences, meeting new people. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what it's all about, right?
Exactly.
Plus, you're doing it in some of the most beautiful part of the
Right.
planet. I mean,
Yeah.
you've been a lot of places and a lot of cool places,
Yeah.
but it's like so many of us just kind of come right back to home here
Right.
and go, you know what? We get a piece of gold here.
Yeah, I know, and it's funny. The closer I move to it, the less I go to it. So I gotta find that. I think Duluth is that happy medium. But I lived in Ely for a little while, and I didn't get into the Boundary Waters nearly enough. But
Crazy, isn't it? But
it's
now
wild.
you have a little one, so now you got somebody to train and
Yep.
start bringing into
Yep.
there and indoctrinate into the world
Exactly.
of goodness.
Yeah, I can't wait to bring our son out into the wilderness, and he went on his first canoe trip, actually, canoe ride, I should say, a couple weeks ago. He's almost 2, and his first canoe experience was in Lake Superior, actually, and we hopped in Lake
Might as well
Superior.
start with Small Lake, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we got in there and paddled into the canal a little bit, and that was pretty exciting.
And he liked it.
He liked it. Yep.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So he's hooked. It's a good start. So
Perfect.
yeah.
Okay, so let's fast forward
Yep.
to your senior trip, and you call it.
Yeah, we call it Ams du Nord, so it's not proper French, but it's based on the French. The French had a very long legacy of canoeing in North America with the fur trade and everything, and a lot of the trips at Minojan are kind of named after that heritage and kind of, it's part of the inspiration of that. So worked up and got invited back on a couple of trips, and finally for this Ams du Nord, which is a 50-day session. This is a 42-day whitewater canoe trip in northern Canada. So
I got a question. Why that route? Now I know that in previous years I've read the book and reread it, and it's awesome. Once you pick it up, you can't put it down. This is really cool. You did a
Thank
great
you.
job of putting your thoughts and everything that happened leading up to the 29th day, and we're gonna get there, folks. And all that. You did a really good job. I love reading nonfiction, and you did it right.
thank you.
And I'm not just saying that because you're sitting in front of me, but you guys, the route. Let's get back to that.
Yeah.
You used to go, or Minojan used to go to one route and made a change, or one area and made a change to this area because they had run-ins with polar bears.
Yeah. So I mean, Minojan's very good about reacting to and being proactive about making sure that we're doing things as safely as possible, and not just repeating something if there's a reason to do it in a better way. So the long trips used to operate in the Hudson Bay area, so they would paddle out to the bay. And there's lots of polar bears in those areas, and there were a couple of close calls with polar bears, no actual incidents, and which is good. But that was enough to.
They just waited for you.
Yeah, right. They they elected to change the area of operations to not be in polar bear country. So it was more inland, more northerly. Most of the trips ending on the Arctic Ocean or on Baker Lake, which is where our trip ended. So our route was the Dubuant, the Coonwalk, and the Kazan rivers. And to get started for this route, you have to drive to the end of the road in northern Saskatchewan and then hop in a float plane for, hundreds of miles. And then that's when you start. It's just way out in the middle of nowhere.
So you're not starting from here. You're starting from already way out there, but
right.
I have 600 miles to go now.
Yep. Yeah.
Already starting up there.
Yeah.
So this route was chosen, and I know there was some discussions back and forth and a
Yep.
lot of maps that you all went through, and Dan was pretty instrumental in it, the leader.
Yep. Yeah, Dan was our guide, and he kind of looked through. He'd been at Minojin for a really long time, and had worked his way up to this trip as well. And so he came up with a couple route options, and then the group of us got together and discussed, the different trips that we could have and kind of what they would involve. And when we talked about the Dubuant, it was really cool. And there's a section in the book where it's really fun. We talk about this exact moment where we were looking at the map, and Dubuant Lake is kind of the middle of our route, right before the middle of the route. And it's where we exited the Northwest Territories and entered the province of Nunavut. Mm-hmm. It's the largest lake in Nunavut. And
on the map, it doesn't look that big.
I know. The lakes themselves aren't, well, they're all huge.
Right.
But it doesn't, when you compare it to like Lake Superior or something, it doesn't have that same sort of presence. But it's a really big lake. And when we looked at it on the map, I could see that the taiga, which is the area of kind of scrub brush, smaller trees,
which is one of the biggest
biomes
in the world,
yeah.
if not the biggest.
Yeah. So it covers a huge swath of North America, and I believe a large section of like Russia, and Eurasia is also taiga. And it's really an interesting area. As you make your way north, the plant life just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And that next like big step after the taiga is tundra, where there's no trees. It's just like grass and moss and
right.
No big plants and everything. So this route, what I really liked about it, and I think some of the my trip mates liked about it, is we transitioned. We went from boreal forest and taiga to tundra. And on the map, that line went right across Dubuant Lake, and I just pictured paddling from one side and just going into a foggy...
Trees on this side, no trees on that side.
Yeah, exactly. Just this amazing transition. It's much more gradual than that. And we didn't paddle across the middle of a lake. But it was a really cool vision, and it was really interesting to just watch that transition over a period of time.
Did you have to talk about it to actually notice it? Because, you guys are pushing hard. You're working hard all day as you're doing this. And so it's not like you're staring around going, oh, the trees are getting smaller. Is this something at camp at night after you've set up, you've ate, you're getting ready for bed, or you're writing your notes, and it's like, hey, wait a minute. 3 days ago, the trees were bigger. Is that how it comes about to you?
Yeah, it's one of those gradual transitions where there wasn't ever like, oh, here we are in the tundra. It just sort of became the part of the backdrop. And, there's so many changes that happen on a trip like this that you aren't aware of. There's a lot of personal changes, a lot of personal growth, and you trim up a bit yourself, and we aren't looking at a mirror, but
Maybe I ought to go on a trip like that because I could use some trimming up after this COVID. The COVID-19 gave me COVID-19 right in the belly.
Oh, yeah. Well, you definitely end up getting pretty lean on a trip like this. Your calorie intake is less than your output. You're working super hard, like you said. But you don't really have a lens that reflects what you're used to. Your normal life is, you get up, you go to your job or you go to school, and then you come home and you look in the mirror, and you have all these kind of things with which you can measure yourself and kind of see things change. But when you go on a trip like this, those are they're not there, and so you don't have that thing to measure yourself against, and so all these changes happen kind of without you noticing, just like the taiga and transitioning to this tundra where there's just no trees at all, and kind of like you're saying, you suddenly realize that
Hey, where'd they go?
barren landscape. And it's an amazing place. It's just so unique.
I don't know if you see me. I'm just kind of staring around as you're talking because I'm trying to envision all this. I'm an adventurer. I've done some pretty cool things. I've never been up there. I've been pretty far north where, it's midnight and you look at your watch and you go, hey, it's midnight. And it's like, oh, wait, it's still light out.
That in itself is crazy.
It is. It's pretty nuts. But I've never, been to where all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, I've been lucky enough to fly to the tundra, but when you get there, it's the tundra, right? And so it's not that transition that you've seen and that you speak about in the book and that you're speaking about now, that hey, this happens over time because we're working our butts off and we're making some miles, putting some miles behind us, and we're making it happen, and all of a sudden, oh gosh, we have gone a long way because there was trees and now they're smaller and now there aren't any. So DuPont Lake, big lake.
Yep.
You guys made a decision not to bring spray skirts.
Yep.
Okay, I honed in on that in the book because I'm like, okay, what was the thinking behind all of this? Obviously, if I had to guess, it'd be weight.
Sure. Yeah. So with that one, that was a risk management decision, and like with a lot of things, it's evolved over time, and now it's regular practice to bring spray skirts on these trips. But the thinking when we went out there, and again, this is 2005. YouTube was founded in 2005, just to give you a little perspective. It was a while ago.
Yeah.
So it was a different era, and the thought was if we were gonna have spray skirts, we would push the limits more. That was kind of like the reason for deciding not to bring them. If you don't have spray skirts, you have to paddle conservatively, which is how we paddled. And it's how we would have paddled with spray skirts, and it's how groups paddle now with spray skirts. They paddle conservatively. What the spray skirts do is prevent a small accident or a small mistake
of some,
from becoming bigger. Once your boat gets waterlogged, it's a lot harder to control.
And okay, we're talking DuPont Lake, but okay, yeah, you get big waves and you get the spray skirts, but you guys also did some unbelievable river running.
Yeah, we did whitewater, and again, we were paddling conservatively, but there were definitely
it
some
didn't
big
look
sets.
that way as you read it. I'm picturing not real conservative many times here when you're like, hey, you weren't in one part of the book. It's, hey, you guys didn't wait for us to tell you to go.
Yep. Yeah. So that was, we got checked there. It was important to, follow your protocols, including wait for the go signal. So we're all human and get a little excited sometimes. But I mean, when you're in a situation like this and on a trip like this, it's just when you really have to hold to your protocols and stick to the way that you operate.
So tell us a little bit about some of the terminology for those that wouldn't know about it, on some of the paddling terminology that you talk about in the book and that you would definitely use specifically if you're in the river system.
Yeah.
And some of the obstacles, the hurdles you can come up against in a river, because I'm known as a lily dipper. That I'll sit in the back and let the engine in the front do all the work, and I'm just back there being the rudder. And they're like, "Are
Yeah.
you paddling?" "Oh, I'm paddling like crazy back here as I'm lily dipping."
Yeah.
You guys couldn't do any lily dipping on this trip.
Nope, no lily dipping, from huge lakes and big wind to rivers. I mean, it's just super important that you work as a team and you're both working really hard. And on the river, the bow and stern, the front and back of the canoe, they rotate. So one moment you might be the person that's steering the canoe, which is typically from the stern, and then in whitewater, depending on the maneuver that you're doing, suddenly that's the bow person doing that.
Sure.
So, on flat water, typically the bow person is the motor and the stern person shouldn't be ruddering. Yeah, don't tell your paddle partners. They should be doing a J stroke or a C stroke to correct the course of the canoe.
Or in my case, I just sit in the back and
You're just
I'm just
groaning.
grunting. I'm just grunting.
Yeah, it's all for show. Yeah, and then both positions can do a draw or a pry where you're pushing or pulling away from the boat to move your end of the canoe one way or another. With whitewater, you do those, and a couple of the most important things are upstream and downstream ferries, and that's where you basically turn the canoe into a plane. So it sits in the river, and it's being pushed one direction, one left or right, by the force of the river. So you're basically holding it in one spot and letting the river push you from one side, one shore to the other shore. And that lets you, I talk about paddling conservatively. That's one way to do that, is to slow things down so that you have time to process and to respond. So a lot of times people imagine running whitewater and you're just blasting down, or you're going the same speed as the river. And one of the key aspects of navigating whitewater is you have to go faster than the water or slower than the water. If you go the same speed as the water, you're a branch and you don't have control. And then you have to watch out for some of the obstacles, like strainers, like a tree. Imagine it straining something like a colander. That's a really dangerous obstacle in whitewater because things can get trapped there. Things like you.
Yeah, exactly.
Your gear, your canoe. There's rocks and boulders, of course, and then there's hidden rocks and boulders called pillows, where from upstream, they just kind of look like a shiny bit of water, but really the water's just pushing over it, and there's like a waterfall behind it. And waterfalls and downstream V's are like what you aim for, and that's what's between two obstacles, and it's usually the cleanest spot to go. So,
and what's a recycler?
A recycler is where the water's just tumbling, and it's flipping around like a load of laundry. And if it's a big one, you can end up being the laundry. And so you typically are going to avoid those. And it's just this amazing, can be this amazing tightrope that you're walking down the set. And
You had to be mentally
really
exhausted
fun.
on a hard river run day, and you had a lot of them. You got to be mentally exhausted, and physically, of course, but mentally too, because you're thinking about all these things that you have to do to stay safe.
Yeah.
Because the last thing you want to be doing is legs up, butt first down a river.
Right. Yeah, you don't want to end up in the water, and that's the right way to do it. If you do, you want to keep your your feet up and so you're not getting foot entrapment, which is one of the big dangers if you end up in the water. I mean, it is certainly physically exhausting. Mentally, a lot of the times we would pull over or do a prairie dog scout, depending if it was a small set where we're standing up in the boats, and if we can see the whole set from upstream, we'd scout it from that way. But a lot of times pulling over, getting on shore, looking at it, and thinking through it as a group and strategizing how we're going to approach this set. Okay, we've got this set of boulders here. There's the downstream V. We're going to take river left. We're going to watch out for that recycler, and we're going to thread that needle there, and then do an upstream ferry across to the other spot, and whatever that route looks like.
I'm exhausted.
Yeah. And I mean, with anything, you kind of get into the rhythm of it. But when you take that pause and you plot out your course, that makes it so that you're not making those split-second decisions, and so that you have the capacity to make those split-second decisions when you need to, and a surprise comes up, or when you make a mistake, which does sometimes
A
happen.
lot of nonverbal and verbal communication during these river runs.
Yep. Yeah. There's nonverbal ones for when you're further away, and then when you're working with your paddle partner in your boat, there's all kinds of communication that's happening. And then as you get to know your paddle partner, there's a lot of intuitive communication that's happening. You know how your partner's going to react, and you both know what you need to do, just at that kind of intuitive level.
Sure.
So
and,
some
and you switched every day.
yeah, some groups elect to have the same paddle partners for whitewater. For that reason, you really gel with your partner. We switched it up every day.
That'd be kind of cool, and you get to
Yeah.
know people better too.
Absolutely.
Just
Yeah.
in a whole different sense.
Yeah, I mean, regardless, you get to know your 5 other people really well on a trip like this.
So, tell us about turtling early on. So I used to be an avid duck hunter. So I've been out in the cold weather where we're kind of pushing the canoe across the ice for 100 yards, and I'm ready to have a heart attack, and then you bust the ice around you. You
Yep.
guys did this for miles.
Yeah, it was. When we talked about DuPont Lake. It's this huge lake, and when we got there, it was 80% covered in ice. It's this
And this
huge
is
obstacle.
mid-July.
Yeah, this is mid-July, and so that kind of speaks to how far north we were.
I was just gonna say we're not in Kansas anymore, are we?
Yeah. So I mean, when we were fishing, we were like, "Oh, let's put the fish on ice for later." It's kind of nice. But yeah, the ice was a huge obstacle. We knew we were gonna potentially encounter ice. We had brought tow straps along with us.
You have pictures of it in the book.
Yeah. So it's like a harness, and then it attaches to the canoe with a long rope, and you can become a mule and tow your boat that way when you're on ice. And that's great. When the ice is firm enough for you to walk on it, lovely. But there were some places where it wasn't firm enough to do that, or we couldn't rely on it to not break under our feet. So turtling is this thing we devised where each person would kind of stand over their end of the boat, and the stern person got to be in a pretty good ergonomic position. Your hands would be on the gunnels, and your feet would be behind you, and you'd be kind of running along like you're about to jump in the back of a bobsled. But the bow person had to straddle the canoe, and so we'd be going along, just this ungainly creature, and then the ice would break, and the bow person would just slam into the gunnels and be caught by the canoe, and the stern person would, do the same thing and kind of jump in. And
After the first day of it, did you find a few muscles you've never used before?
oh yeah, it was exhausting. What I really found was some muscles I'd never bruised before.
When I was reading that, I'm like, yeah, that doesn't sound very fun at
Yeah,
all. It's
that
like,
was-
I can find other ways to punish myself.
Yeah, that was painful. I mean, it was nice because then you didn't end up in the drink. But
How many miles was that in this crazy time of having to push a canoe like that over ice
it's
and snow cone?
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say the snow cone was way worse than the turtling. The turtling, you could go pretty fast. As far as the mileage, I don't know. It was so distorted. I'm sure we were not going very far. It just took a very long time. But when we got to the ice that was, like you said, snow cone or candlestick ice, it was like pushing through slush. We couldn't stand on it, and you'd try to push laterally to get the boat to move, and it was incredibly grueling. And luckily, we only had
days.
what's that?
Days and days.
A couple days at least of this ice travel, which is more than I'd like to do again.
So, one of the other things is you guys kind of miscalculated your food.
Yeah.
I was on a trip with my son and 5 of his buddies and one of my friends and myself. And we got a different campsite. We were smart adults, and they all had one campsite in the Boundary Waters. We had like 2.5 days left in the trip, so we're not on a trip like you, like 50 days, right? But they had eaten every bit of their food. They had used every bit of their spices. They had no oil or anything left for fish, and they come over and they go, "Can we have some of your food?" And it's like, no.
Yeah.
And if they're like, "Well, what are we supposed to eat?" We're going to go home. And I said, "Well, I have the car keys. How are you guys getting home?" So what we
That's
ended
some
up
tough love.
well, you know what? They got to learn some way. And you know what? Guess what? They were like 16, 17 years old.
Yeah.
So it made me laugh because I've experienced this. So my son and his friends ate boiled walleyes
Nice.
for 2.5 days. That's all they ate. Boiled walleyes.
With trail spice, which is
No, they didn't have
which
any.
is dirt.
Yeah, exact trail spice. Okay, the real trail spice. But that's what they lived on for 2.5 days. And when we actually came out into Ely, the Pizza Hut that was in Ely,
Oh yeah.
you've never seen guys eat so much pizza so fast in your life.
Do you want
But-
fish tacos? Absolutely not.
Yeah, exactly. So, you guys
Yeah.
are on a 50-day trip.
Yeah.
You're about halfway through, and you're like, hey, something's not adding up here. And then we'll get into about the femmes because we did some bartering and things
Yep.
like that, right?
Yeah. So our issue was mismeasuring. So there's like a set of equations that we have for calculating how much of all these different ingredients you need for how many people you have and for how many days you're going to be out there, and it works really well. And what happens is if you mismeasure when you're doing that and you're going for this many days, that ends up magnifying and becoming bigger.
absolutely.
So what we found is that we were I can't remember the exact quantity, but we were short. We were short meals. And luckily, right when about the time we figured this out, we started to have tremendous success with fish. So we started to supplement some of our fish, and we'd overpacked our dessert cabinet. So that was nice. So
You're dudes.
yeah. And it's a canoe trip. I mean, that's one of the nice things about a canoe trip. With a backpacking trip, you're like, how many ounces of oil are we bringing?
Yeah.
And it's like a mindset that's hard for me to adopt sometimes. But with a canoe trip, you have a lot more latitude. You're like, all right, let's bring a bottle of oil, and let's bring, a bunch of bags of candy.
Yeah,
and-
well, wait a minute. Hold on a minute here. That's if you're on the water all the time.
yeah.
There's this thing called portaging.
Yeah.
You got to portage all that weight too. So there
Yeah.
is some hiking
Yep.
where you're carrying everything here as you're portaging and you're carrying the canoe and all this stuff, which I've heard you in a different podcast that you say that you like portaging. I'm the guy who looks for the shortest portages.
Yeah. I'm not against going on short portages, but I love portaging. I don't know what it is exactly, but I mean, it's a break from canoeing. I think what it does is it really balances it out. You're sitting in a canoe for so long.
Cramped up,
Yep.
at some point, legs are sore. It's outside of the knees are bruised if you're in the bow.
Yeah, exactly. Or your knees are bruised if you're kneeling for whitewater.
Yeah.
So, it's a good opportunity to stretch, to change up the pace. I was just portaging a couple of weeks ago into Hartley Park. I hadn't paddled there before. So it's a little bit of a portage to get to the lake from the
parking lot.
From the parking lot.
Yeah.
It's not bad, but you do have to portage there. And I just was appreciating the kind of static pressure massage on my shoulders, and thinking about how when you're paddling all day, there's not much of a break for your shoulders, and I think there might be something to that it just like is giving you a little bit of a massage.
So,
Some people will curse me for comparing it to that.
well,
but-
hey, by the way, we sell canoe packs, and it's the first time I've ever heard it as a massage.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to say. We're going to actually,
deep tissue.
hey, mental note to self, we sell massage packs.
Yeah,
There's-
exactly.
Ooh, thank you. You're in marketing. You are
Yeah.
a good guy.
Yeah.
So, but the thing I always hated on portages is, at least where I go, there's bugs.
Yeah.
So you obviously had no bugs on this trip.
That's very far from the truth. I've never had worse bugs. I've never had bugs anywhere near as bad as this in the Boundary Waters or Quetico or anything. The bugs that we had were primarily mosquitoes and black flies, and they were absolutely horrendous. We had a bug tent, which was really important. We sometimes called it our sanity tent, and we all brought bug jackets, and I bought some lesser one, and then the guys who had the original bug shirt Elite Edition, which you probably carry in your store.
Yes, sir.
That's the one to get, is the original bug shirt. Yeah, they work really well, and I've never had so many black fly bites.
So
it was just wild.
So the portages weren't quite as fun on this trip when you knew what you get, even though it's a change. And I do agree
Yeah.
with that. Even though I'm not a huge fan of big long portages, I'm also very old. But it was always the bugs that I wasn't looking forward to
Yeah.
on a portage. So I always like, a September trip or late September trip would
That's
always be kind of a nice gig.
my favorite
But
time.
you guys dealt with some horrendous bugs, and you talk about the bug tent quite a bit. You actually talk about setting it up in the wind, and it was
Yeah.
like everyone grabbed something, and everyone grabbed something really light to hold
Yeah.
it down.
What are we doing? Yeah, I mean, the wind was a serious thing up there. As you get to the point where there's no trees around, the wind just has nothing to slow it down. So, like, when you're portaging, if there's no wind, great, you can portage more easily, but the bugs are hanging out. And if there's wind, great, there's no bugs, but you're fighting with the wind to carry the boat. So, yeah, no matter how you slice it, they're a challenge.
What's the worst of two evil at times?
Yeah,
So-
exactly.
So the book is called The 29th Day. We're up to day 1920.
Yeah.
Because I kind of made some notes here along the book here, and I have.
So you
Look
have
at
a
this.
whole
Do you
stack
see
of
this?
Post-its in there.
Look at this. I highlighted. I wrecked your book, but you know what? Alex
That's
signed
good.
it for me, and so this is really cool. And I did. I highlighted all over the book because there were so many cool things, especially as we get to the 29th day. Holy crap! I wore out a highlighter. But we're up to day 1920.
Yep.
You see your first bear,
Yeah.
and you guys are in there's a big canyon right here.
Yeah. Yeah, this is at the end of Dubois Lake. So we finally make it through all that terrible ice and get to the end of the lake, and it's a known portage, Dubois Canyon, and it was our first layover day. This is 3 weeks into the trip. It's our first day of rest. And partway through that day,
You guys decided, forget it. Let's just keep going.
let's just go. No, we were very happy to have that day off. I mean, you kind of, it's the joy of work when you're on a trip like this, and it's great. But you do need to give yourself a break every once in a while and just eat all day. So we were doing that, and partway through the day, I was standing next to my friend Mike, and we were chatting, and he just stopped and pointed at the far shore and yelled bear, and I looked, and there was this grizzly bear that was hoofing it right towards our site, same, like right on a straight line towards us. And as soon as he yelled, it stopped. It heard him, and it turned around and it ran in the opposite direction. And that was really a sobering reminder. Our route started outside of grizzly country, so we gradually paddled into grizzly country, and it was not long before we saw it that we had entered their range. Grizzlies in that area are incredibly rare. We've been told by several people who go there.
I'm
a lot.
actually looking right now because I'm trying to see. There's a quote in here from somebody who told you.
Yeah, Bob O'Hara.
There you go.
Yeah, he's kind of the resident expert of canoeing in this area. And so one of the things we'd heard from him is that grizzly bears are very rare. It's unlikely that you're going to see one. Still we were prepared for seeing grizzlies. We talked about it. We did training back at camp on how to use bear spray.
And you all had your individual bear sprays.
We didn't have our
Okay.
individual bear spray, and that's so that's one of the things that I advocate for now, and that's how camp operates things now. Is every group of people has to have bear spray with them. So that's a key when you're in grizzly country, because if you don't have it, you can't use it, and invariably you're going to need it.
We'll
when
talk
you-
about that in a little while here, folks. You
Yeah,
got to
there's-
hang in there with us.
there's a
We're
little-
getting there.
Yeah, so well, we reviewed how to use it. We talked about taking off the safety cap, aiming it, spraying it, and what you do when you're in a group, and then what you do if you're by yourself and you see one, and you're supposed to speak calmly to the bear and try to show it that you're not a threat. Say, "Hey, bear, whoa, bear, it's okay, bear," and back away slowly. And whatever you do, don't run, because it'll initiate their chase instinct.
Yep.
And we went through all this stuff, and
And you had bear bangers and all that.
yeah, we had bear bangers, which are noise-making devices, and you set up your camp a certain way where your food is far away from your tent, which is far away from your cooking area, so that if it is attracted by something smelly, it's not going to go to your tents and stuff like that. So we double-checked what we were doing, and I remember turning to Dan and saying, that's the only way I'd ever want to see a grizzly bear in the wild, is on the other side of a canyon like this, with this amazing tumultuous whitewater with the bear running in the opposite direction. And I didn't know that I was foreshadowing what would happen to me almost a week later on Princess Mary Lake.
But you're in an area where there's grizzlies. It's like, you're probably not gonna see one, because grizzlies, they don't want to be around you either. They
Right.
really don't choose to be around people.
Right.
But you're in their turf now.
Yep.
They're the apex predator. You're not.
Yeah, they definitely are. These barren ground grizzlies, and their range is just incredibly wide, so they rove a lot. The other aspect of being at this point, we're in the tundra, so there's no trees, so you can see for such great distances up there. So the concept of like surprising an animal like this it's hard to imagine a situation where that would happen.
And now you're also up in muskox country.
Yep. Yeah. So we were seeing.
You're getting up there.
Yeah, we're in a whole different era. We're kind of back to the Ice Age when we get to this point. It's a pretty crazy place.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the landmarks you came across? Some of the ancient landmarks, whether it was for an old hunting camp, whether it was landmarkers for maybe hunters or maybe people that were nomadic and traveling.
Yeah. So the Inuit up there have been, operating in that territory forever. And so there's a lot of, and you can see forever, so it's not hidden by trees and things like that, some of the things that they left. So we would come across a couple of camps every now and then, and those are typified by like stone circles where the tents would have been, kayak racks that are arranged a certain way, and then some kind of standing stone sort of setups. We'd also see these large inukshuks, which are essentially a cairn, but they're made with enormous rocks, and they're used for navigation. They're also used for kind of like funneling caribou during the hunts. So caribou's eyesight's pretty poor, and you get people together and kind of get them to this. Imagine like a fish net that kind of gets narrower and narrower, where they drive these caribou to these sets of inukshuks that would drive the caribou and funnel them to an area where they would, at that point, dispatch them and harvest them for meat and
That's
fur.
pretty
and everything.
cool. I mean, think
It's
about
really
it. You
cool.
read about it in books, and I've read about it in books for many years, never seen one.
Yeah.
But to then actually see these and go, wow, these people did a lot of work to build these things.
Right. Yeah, and just imagining, how much work it took, not only to build that, but just to survive in this incredibly stark landscape. It was very cool and a great reminder that, we're guests there, and there are people that have been there for a much longer time than we have. So the other thing that really brought back the history was, we talk about glaciers. There's these eskers up there too, which are an old ancient riverbed from a glacier. So a river would be flowing through the glacier and there'd be sediment in it. And then when the glacier melts, it leaves this long ridge of sediment that's like this mound that just stretches for miles in some cases, and some of them are short, but it's like...
How tall are they? I was trying to vision this when I'm reading. How tall are they?
They vary. So early on, we had some that were like 30 feet tall, and then we had some that were like hundreds of feet tall.
Are you serious?
Yeah, they're huge. And the perspective's just very distorted because you have nothing to measure against. You don't have trees or buildings or whatever, so you can look up at it and be like, oh, that's a short walk, and then
that's why people need to read your book, is because you made the visualization of this. You did it really well, where you talk about just, now I'm up there where the landscape is so different than anything else we've ever seen. The landscape is so foreign to us that, can I see a mile? Can I see 30 miles? Can I see 40 miles? Because it's flat, but actually it's not.
Right.
And, well, hey, I mean, here's what I would think. And I've been in grizzly country, but I've been in different type of grizzly country. In this one, I can see myself getting lulled into, hey, I can see forever, so they're not going to sneak up on me. The heck
Yeah.
they can't.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's, you just always have to have your guard up and just recognize that, when you're in grizzly country, something can happen when you least expect it. And that's likely when it will happen. If you if you leave your bear spray and go to the bathroom without it, something's going to knock on the door or whatever. If you're in a
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Murphy's Law comes into play.
It does. So we're going to take a little break in a minute here, but before that, I'm a huge lake trout fisherman. Been doing it for many, many years. I don't even like you anymore. 17 years old, and you're catching a lake trout like that, and you're like, you're just trying to catch dinner. You're
Yeah.
not trophy fishing here, buddy.
Right. And still, we ended up with some trophies. They were huge and just too easy.
That had
Made it hard to fish anywhere else.
I'm looking at the picture right now. Like, you were a young buck back then.
Mm-hmm.
17.
If I shave, I still look like that.
I'm sure you do. I don't. So I'm looking at a picture of you carrying this thing, and it's literally at mid rib cage, and its fin is at your ankles.
Yeah.
And, hey guys, we're just trying to catch dinner. Like, I'm trying to catch just a little 15-incher for
how
dinner
many
to feed
people?
us. Yeah, exactly. I didn't realize you were
Me and my
inviting
friends.
everyone and none of it
Yeah.
to dinner. And then the bucket next door, when the fillets are in there, it's like, I want some of that right now.
Yeah, those were steaks. Those were really good. And that trout was just dragging our canoe around. And that was the biggest one from the trip. But we were catching big ones. And
I'm guessing
on spoons.
Mid 20s.
For weight?
Yeah.
I don't know. I caught a smaller one at the beginning of the trip, and it was hard to hold up. By this point, I was very much more fit after paddling that far, and it was easy to hold up.
You know what? You probably didn't even care. It's like, I'm hungry because we don't have that much food.
I was just so stoked. I mean, I caught the biggest fish I'd ever caught, and I'm likely to catch it.
Well, you're not smiling in the picture at all.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. My
still-
teeth are just like this bright white line, and
I'm glad to see that you were having good dental hygiene 20 some days into your trip too.
Yep.
So that's good.
toothbrush, toothpaste, one of the most best ways to make yourself feel revitalized when you're in the backcountry. It's so funny.
So, folks, we're up to day 29.
Oh boy.
All right. So we're going to take a really quick break. Do not go away. The name of the book is The 29th Day, and we're at day 29. Hang in there.
Get outdoors with Duluth Pack. Duluth Pack is your one-stop shop for all of your quality outdoor equipment and gear needs. Shop apparel, camping gear, hammocks, water bottles, pet supplies, saws and axes, canvas and leather packs, and more at Duluth Pack. Duluth Pack is the oldest canvas and leather bag and pack maker in the USA. Proudly made in Minnesota for nearly 140 years. Support American made today with Duluth Pack. Duluth Pack, made in the USA since 1882.
Hey, folks, Tom Sega with Leader of the Pack podcast, special guest Alex Messenger, and we are at day 29, the author of The 29th Day. We're into it now.
Yikes.
So, yeah, no kidding. I got goosebumps right now. So, day 29.
Yeah.
It's a good day. It's a layover day.
Yeah.
All right. So, we're on this huge adventure. We're about halfway through.
More than halfway. It was a 42-day on-trail session, so we're
two-thirds of the way through.
Yeah.
Worked your butts off. Got to this point. You guys can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel. You're just ripped. Yeah, you've leaned out and all this, but you're just in your motion now, right? You guys are just powering through, and now it's just part of the day, and away we go. And day 29 is something that is I can't wait to get there because this is a layover day, and we're going to just eat all day and sleep and do whatever the heck we want.
Yep. Exactly.
All right. It's all yours.
Yeah, so we woke up and started the day like any other layover day, which is, you launch into breakfast and start thinking about lunch. At this point, we'd been overlapping with the girls group, the FOMs, who were on a very similar trip to ours.
FOMs. I mispronounced. I
No,
said
we're mispronouncing.
Okay.
It's like, I think it's FUM,
Okay.
but it's French. So we mispronounced the names of these groups. But so these girls had been on a parallel route until a few days prior, where our routes intersected, and we ran into them. But from the same camp, and so we'd interacted with them, and we talked about food shortages. They were
Yeah, sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there.
yeah, they had a food surplus, which was great to have them suddenly on our route. So they helped supplant some of our food that we needed. So we'd seen them off and on, and we're kind of leapfrogging. But this day, we were taking a layover day, and they were going to be paddling on, and we were kind of waving to them from afar, and they...
These are high school boys and high school girls.
Yep,
You guys better be pretty focused on what you're doing out there.
100%.
Okay. We'll leave it there.
So, they're paddling past our island, and then they just turn and make a beeline towards us, and they're waving at us and trying to warn us about something, and we can't really understand what they're saying, and they come up towards our camp, and as they get closer, we realize they're yelling, "Bears, impending doom," and they had seen animals from shore, or on shore, as they were paddling by, and they hadn't really seen much of any wildlife on their trip. As they described it to us, it was apparent that they were looking at a group of musk oxen, which is a little understandable without having seen them. But
they're dangerous on their own.
yeah, they're definitely something that we want to know. I mean, they're right around the corner, so it's really good that we were aware that they're there. Musk oxen are straight out of the Ice Age. They're like a yak crossed with a bison, and they'll charge at random, and they'll gore people and fight off grizzlies and things like that. So they're a very powerful animal, and they have this huge bony plate with horns and everything. So we appreciated their warning us about this wildlife nearby, and said bon voyage, but it was a very a chilling portent in hindsight, based on what would happen later in the day. But we said bye to them, and weren't going to see them again for the rest of the trip, and went on to our meals. And after lunch, we were on this island, and like I was talking about, we're north of the tree line at this point. There's this huge island on the middle of this enormous lake. It's 20 some miles from shore to shore at the largest span of the lake. And
So we're on an island. We're safe.
yeah, that's kind of the misconception that so many of us have, right? Bears can't swim. That's not true. Bears can definitely swim.
Faster than you.
Yeah, faster than me, and they can run faster than me. And we didn't know that there was at least one bear on this island. But after lunch, everyone was going to head up to the top of this island, which was the highest point of land around. Several hundred feet off the surface of the lake, just would be an amazing view.
Switchback your way up, right?
Yeah, really steep. And everyone was headed up there, and I was just really tired. At the trip like this, I'm a big fan of doing what you want to do and enjoying yourself. And at this point, I did not want to go up there. I just wanted to take a nap. So I laid down and took a nap while everybody else went up, and was going to meet them when I woke up. But by the time I woke up, they were all back down, and I just woke up with a start inexplicably, and had this overwhelming feeling that I was late, that I had to get up this ridge and get to the top there.
But you had slept quite a while.
I had slept a while, yeah. I talked with Mike not too long ago about the timing, and it was hours.
So you're going to take a little cat nap? And
Yeah, I didn't set an alarm, which is appropriate. There's no need for time up there. But
Sure.
I knew that I'd overslept somehow. And so I just started up, in earnest, and all of them had come back down except for Dan, our guide. He was in the process of coming down this very steep ridge, and I started up, talked with him about what was up there, and then continued my way up, like you're saying, switchbacks. I mean, it took me about 10 minutes to scramble up this nasty scree and moss and find a good route up to the top.
And you're the photographer. I mean, you
yeah.
have some of the equipment, so I'm going to go up here, and Dan had told you hey, there's some pretty cool photography opportunities up here.
Yeah, and the guys had been up there for a long time. They'd been reading, drawing, taking their own pictures. So I had my camera, which is a Nikon SLR, in a Pelican case, and that didn't make climbing up any easier because I had this, one hand was hobbled. And but yeah, I was going to head up there and take pictures, and there was an Inukshuk up there that Dan had restored a little bit. And so I was going to head up there and just kind of have my own time and see what I saw and appreciate the 50-mile views.
What the hell? I'm on an island. What's going to get me here?
Yeah, exactly. And got to the top, and the top is just this lunar landscape of just emptiness and smooth, polished granite and these boulders that were up to like basketball size and just very, very stark. And because it was this high point, it kind of disappeared over the edges, and then there's just this endless expanse of lake and tundra in every direction. And so I'm walking up these rolling granite domes, and I didn't know it, but there was a 600-pound barren ground grizzly bear walking up the other side of one of these ridges, and we were headed straight for each other.
It's enough of a ridge that you're hidden from it.
Yep.
It's hidden from you.
Yep.
These guys have been up there for a couple hours.
Yeah. And they've been gone for maybe 15 minutes, So
you guys are on a collision course.
Yep.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So as I'm walking up the one side, it comes up the other, and we meet at the top 30 feet apart, which is a terrible way to start an encounter with a grizzly bear. Yeah. You walk further from your car to the grocery store.
Holy moly.
Super, super close. It's a surprise encounter, which is a bad way to... So you don't want to surprise like any animal, much less the apex predator of the area. And I'm, 150-pound, 17-year-old.
It did not know you were here. So it's literally you're both startled and surprised.
Yep. And the bear and I both had the same reaction once we saw each other and recognized more or less what we were looking at, which was like the bear and I both kind of like flinched back and looked at each other to size up the situation. Moments before that, when I saw its fur, I thought that it was a musk oxen, which, would have been a bad situation. And then when I realized that it was a grizzly bear, I realized that it was
a really bad situation.
The worst case scenario.
And you're in it.
Yeah. So the bear and I both had that same reaction, and I flashed back to all the stuff we'd done to prepare, talking through what you're supposed to do when you see a grizzly bear. And I thought about the bear spray, and I thought about taking it out, and I thought about taking off the safety and pressing the button and, spraying this mist of bear spray towards this bear. And that bear spray was in the tent, so I couldn't use it. It doesn't do any good at all if it's not on you.
Oops.
Yeah. So that's definitely something I do different now when I'm in the wild.
Holy moly.
So
your brain goes right to the training, right to what you've talked about 100 times.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, you don't have it.
Yeah. So then it falls back to the next step, which is don't run. Whatever you do, don't run. Speak calmly to the bear, back away slowly, try to show it that you're not a threat, and don't run. And the one thing that I wanted to do was get away from that bear, and I wanted to run. So it was very hard to overcome that kind of instinct to just get away. Bears can run at close to 40 miles an hour, and I could maybe run at 17 miles an hour. And what happens when you get to the ridge? I'd go tumbling down. So
yeah, you just talked about the switchbacks. You came up and the climb you did and everything.
Yeah.
So what do you do when you get to the edge?
Yeah, it probably would have caught me before then. And if you do run, like I'd said before, I think it kicks in their chase instinct, and it becomes, instead of a defensive encounter, it could become a predatory encounter.
We're talking 30 feet. We're not talking 30 yards or 300 yards, or it's like, hey, bear, and you're swinging your arms and backing off where you can get to that edge. We're talking 30 feet.
Yeah. The decision is just forced on both sides. I don't. There's no opportunity for me or the bear to really be like, you know what? Let's just let bygones be bygones and head our separate ways. That is an option, but it didn't decide to take that one.
Wow, yeah, but at 30 feet, you're both surprised.
Right.
He's an apex predator, and what's he going to do is he's going to
Yeah.
protect himself and his turf.
Exactly.
I don't
Fight
think
or flight.
he's not going to go, hey, Alex,
I'll
good
give-
Alex,
I'll
be
give
good,
you the
Alex."
way. Yeah, exactly. Why don't you go? Yeah, so I mean, like, that's what I said though. I said, "Hey, bear, whoa, bear, it's okay, bear," and I probably didn't
That
sound calm. I'm sure I was shaking. I don't think I can impersonate myself at that time because my pulse was just going crazy and my adrenaline was just off the charts. And
Mine is right now.
Yeah, it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. So I'm backing away slowly, trying to sound calm, and it did a couple stationary bluff charges where it would launch onto its front paws and just grunt like,
You do the old woof.
yeah, right.
Ugh.
Yeah, and it's trying to see what I'm going to do, and I kept doing the same thing and backing away slowly, and basically it faded from stationary bluff charges to a full speed charge, and I kind of watched its expression and felt like I could see it kind of shift.
You could.
At one point.
In the
Yeah.
book, you talk about that. You could literally see, you were so literally lasered in on it, you could see that shift from, okay, he didn't get me on the first charge or two because those are bluff charges, but something here changed.
Yeah, and that, I mean, if you talk to other people, I'm sure they'd say, well, yes, but that's the way that I read that situation was, it was doing it one way, and then it changed, and it went to a more aggressive, like made a decision, like now it's
I'm going
coming
to have
at
to
me.
go to therapy after
Yeah,
this.
we can go together. So it made that shift, and I faded from "Hey bear, whoa bear" to yelling obscenities and help. And I knew what my options weren't, which was I couldn't run. I couldn't use the bear spray because I didn't have it. And I didn't really know what to do at that point. People talk about, oh, you can play dead, and that's certainly within the realm of one thing that you can do.
But isn't there a camp that's, hey, let's look really big, or let's play dead? There's another camp.
Yeah, so typically with grizzlies, you don't want to be like, hey, I'm in charge. You don't want to make yourself big. If there's more people, that changes. Like if you've got a group of people, you want to be like, hey, bear, get out of here. Like, go away and prepare your deterrent. When it's just you, it's a little bit different. So like the typical advice is, give the grizzly the the ground and don't try to intimidate it. But what I'll say to that is anytime you're going into grizzly, talk to the rangers for that area and find out what they suggest you should do, what you should carry, because different areas might have different requirements and they might have problem bears or things like that. But
sure. But my assumption is this bear's never seen a human being
Right.
before.
Yeah, exactly. This isn't a problem bear. It's not acting. It's acting so normally for a grizzly bear.
I don't know grizzlies very well. I can just read what I read, right?
Yeah.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, I mean, it looked healthy. It was of good size. It wasn't enormous. It wasn't, it didn't look like a tiny bear. Some bears.
500-600 pounds is not small.
No, it's not small. It's definitely not small, but it's not like a Kodiak, coastal Kodiak. It's
Right.
like 1,200 pounds or whatever. I mean, I did not look at this bear and say to myself, man, that's a small bear. That never crossed my mind.
I can whoop his butt.
Yeah, exactly. But like we were just recently at the Lake Superior Zoo, and those bears are smaller than the bear that I had. So
Been there.
yeah,
So these are smaller than your buddy.
yep, yeah. They're more trim. I don't know how much they actually weigh. And the way that I've gauged the size of my bear is by going to zoos and looking at a 600-pound grizzly bear and being like, that's what mine looked like. It's a scary situation. So it's charging
Wow.
at me.
Yeah.
And as it got closer, I could feel the ground shaking underneath me from its paws. And at this point, I don't know what to do, and I'm yelling. I'm yelling help to the guys. I'm yelling no because this is just a terrible situation, and it's not how things are supposed to go. And just trying to get help. And not sure what to do. And when it was 5 or 10 feet from me, I thought that this distance was longer, but then as I was working on the book, I referenced the journal, and I said 5 to 10 feet is when I had my Pelican case in my hand. This bear's coming at me full speed, and it's the only time I'll throw my camera. It's also the only time I throw mine hit something it was supposed to, because I was a terrible shot. But I wound up, and I threw this Pelican case underhand, and I threw it right at the bear's face, and I hit it square in the nose with enough force to turn its head all the way to the side. Pelican case went thump and flew over its shoulder. The bear grunted.
Page 131, folks. I'm looking at it. I can highlight it all over it.
Yeah, I I don't know if I can suggest a Pelican case as a deterrent. I don't think that would be prudent for me to suggest that.
So you nailed this son of a gun right in the melon.
Yep.
Hard enough that you turn its head.
Yep. Hard enough to turn its head to the side. It grunted. The Pelican case went off in the distance, so it couldn't see where I was for a couple steps. And I just, at this point, I'm totally on instinct, and I jumped to the side, out of the way, and dodged it on that first pass, bullfighting style. And it missed me, and it went right past me. By this point, its head is turned around again, but I'd given myself just a little bit of an opening, and was able to get out of the way and not get barreled over, and was able to dodge the teeth and the claws, even though it was swinging at me. But as soon as it realized it missed me, it came at me again with just so much speed that I never thought an animal could have. I've never seen something move that fast.
So
much less
none of
180.
none of this. I missed the guy, and I'll take a look at him. It's turn around and back at you right now.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, if you think about, like, a bull runs past the matador and then goes off a little bit and then trots around and comes back again, it was like nothing like that.
Nothing like that. Okay.
No, it was just as like a couple steps passed, and it was right back at me, coming at me again, and I was able to dodge it again that same way, just last second, jumping out of the way. And each time we got closer and closer, and it was biting at me and swiping at me, and the claws started to hit me. I was layered up relatively well, so and my adrenaline was going crazy, so I knew that I was getting hit, and my skin burned from these claws swiping across my back. But I'd find out later that they didn't actually like slice my skin, which was just amazing.
Just hit you hard enough that it just burned because it hit you nailed you so hard.
Yeah, it actually melted the fibers on the fleece. There was so much speed and friction from the claws, so there's like these little melty lines
Holy crap.
of permanent claw marks on there, even though they didn't go through it.
Okay, weird question. Do you still have them?
Yeah. Do I still have the jacket?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Sweet.
Mountain Hardware. That was a good jacket.
That's awesome.
So, but
So you're in the middle of this right now.
Yeah.
He's nailed you a couple times by swinging at you. He's missed you with the mouth.
Yep.
You're like, you need to go to Running of the Bulls in Pamplona because you're getting pretty good at it by this point.
Yeah.
You should put that on your bucket list, by the way.
Yeah. I don't know about that.
Okay. So he just keeps coming back quicker.
Yep. Keeps coming back quicker, and each time we get closer and closer, he doesn't overshoot as much. And each time he gets me with more of the claws, and after a few times of this back and forth, he gets close enough that he bites at my leg, and I pull my leg out of the way at the last second, and the jaws snap shut right next to it. Just clamp.
Reading
And
the book, I totally tried to visualize that.
That's a pretty unique thing. I mean, it was inches from my leg, and it snapped shut.
Oh my God.
I mean, thinking back on it, it's kind of hard to, it's hard to like bring back the rawness of that, the intensity of that, and just how much force it was shutting and how close it was to my leg.
Because you could hear the teeth.
Yeah.
When he missed you and he was really close to your leg, when
Yeah.
he missed you, you heard those teeth snap together.
Yep. Yeah. And saw a little bit of the teeth. And just inches from my leg. And that one, again, on instinct, it was just my leg went out of the way at the last second, and it otherwise would have gotten it. But then at that same moment, its paw came up, and I saw it just inches from my face, this open palm grizzly paw with claws about to hit me.
How big is it? I mean, is it as big as your head?
Probably, yeah. I mean, the meat of the palm hit me in like the cheekbone, and then the claws were back at my ear. So I guess not as big. I mean, they're not. If you look at like the paws of a grizzly that's a coastal grizzly, they're really big. But the barren ground grizzlies they're leaner and they're just a little bit tighter. So their paws aren't quite as big as like some of those plaster casts that you see of these monsters.
I don't
But
care.
it's-
You just got sucker
Yeah,
punched by one in the
exactly.
face.
It doesn't matter. There's so much force behind it, and it hit me, and my head whipped to the side, and I went flying to the side, and that's when I just realized that there was nothing physically that I could do to overcome this bear. Like there's just no
Your brain actually
comparison.
went there.
Yeah, it was just going so fast, and like there's a lot of different ways that you can react to a stressful situation. You know, you can do like what I was doing at the beginning, where I'm defaulting to my training, or like I'm doing in this situation where I'm defaulting to winging it. You know, you can also have extreme tunnel vision, where you just fixate on one thing, and you can just not remember a thing too. So there's a lot of different ways that our bodies will react in a situation like
think
this.
mine would have defaulted to that one, that I had lost my bodily functions.
Yeah, that's one of them too. I mean, you know, your body kind of is like, this, we don't need to hold on to this right now, and it just opens the gates and
Hopefully he doesn't like me then.
yeah, maybe it's a deterrent.
So he
Like a
lets you
skunk.
have it in the face.
Yeah, just a slam, and that's what grizzlies use to take down like caribou and muskox and
Obviously humans.
and humans. Yeah, and it's an immensely powerful blow, and it'll stun them, knock them out, break their neck, or kill them. And with humans, it'll do any combination of those, and sometimes it'll just peel the skin off like a mask.
Well, you're a good-looking fella, and I don't see anything left there at
Yeah.
this point. So we got lucky.
I was incredibly lucky. The distance was just perfect, where the claws. I mean, if I'd been a couple inches away from it, I would have had just disfiguring claw marks across my face. Probably would have lost an eye or something. But it was just the meat of the palm that was the majority of that blow, and you know, one of the claws got my ear a tiny bit.
No, you were bleeding for a while because you read a little further.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
They weren't worrying about that one so much later.
No, yeah,
but his claw got you back behind the ear pretty good, it sounds like.
Could have been a lot worse though. So that was really lucky. But that hit me, and I just went flying, and that's when I really started to feel that I was about to die, which was just a terrible, terrible feeling, and I just didn't want that to happen, and you know, this wasn't how things were supposed to go for me, and it was just a really heavy and awful feeling. And as I'm still in mid-air, it had that same paw, and it threw me to the ground hard on my tailbone, and its head was right at my thigh, and it bit me.
So it got you on the right side. You're actually, just so people can visualize what I'm going through right now, Alex is swinging his hand, showing, you know, kind of where he got hit, and then he just literally clamped on to his right thigh.
Yeah, just right
With his own hand.
right below the hip, and jaws all the way around my leg. You know, as at the widest part of your leg there. And people are like, so the adrenaline rush take care of the pain? Like, well, no. I felt its teeth go in both sides of my leg, and then
Oh my God.
blacked out.
Tell us a little about that, because you didn't did you black out from, in the book I was like, well, do you think maybe this was as I'm reading, is this a delayed reaction to getting smacked in the face so hard that you blacked out?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you blacking out because this is your bodily reaction to, I just got half my body in the mouth of a grizzly bear. And it, by the way, its canines touched in the middle.
Yeah, right. Not quite, but they can. They can snap a femur in half, which is just crazy and scary.
So it got you right at the top of the femur in the hip joint.
Yep,
Oh my.
just below the joint, so it was
Okay.
all along the femur there. But yeah, basically, it's a vasovagal response. So the my body just turned off once it felt that, and it's like if you faint from getting a shot, it's kind of a similar physiological response. But it hit my kill switch and made me lose consciousness. So it wasn't a delayed
Okay.
loss of consciousness from that.
It was that vasovagal.
Yeah, and if you go into enough pain, your body will just kind of, put you out. I mean, you see that in surgery scenes from, the 1800s or whatever, where they start to work or start to amputate in the Civil War, and then the guy goes to sleep. Similar kind of thing here.
So how long did we take another nap that day?
Yeah, thought I'd gotten enough rest.
Right.
I'm not sure. I think it was a really short period of time, but I don't know. I mean, overall, I was gone from the group for a really short period of time. Talking a matter of minutes from disappearing
from
to
Dan
coming back.
to you coming back over. So,
Yeah.
So all of this is, it is lightning fast happening.
Yeah. I don't know how I got from there to there. Maybe the bear tossed me around, or maybe, and probably most likely, I did a really good job of playing dead once I lost consciousness. I practiced for hours right beforehand and every night. And so I played dead at this point. And the bear decided that I was no longer a threat. So this is a very classic defensive encounter with a grizzly. If it sees you as a threat, it needs to neutralize that threat to protect itself, like you were saying. And so once that threat is eliminated, this bear decided to get out of Dodge and to leave me alone. It can go a couple different ways, but that's relatively classic.
So he starts moving away from you.
Yeah.
You wake up at this point.
Yep. And
You're kind of afraid to move because he'll still think I'm alive.
yeah.
Because it sounds like your brain came back to really quick, but not everything else. Not your ears, maybe not your eyes right away as things started, as you were rebooting the computer, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. And then I finally got, some of those other senses enough to figure out which way was up, and then to see that this bear was still there. But it was running away.
How far is he now?
So he's probably 20 feet, 25 feet by the time I see him running away.
So this is happening fast, and when you waking back up and you're coming back too and everything.
Yeah. I mean, I was in the same place where it had happened,
Yeah.
Sometimes people end up being taken somewhere, and that's typically more of a predaceous encounter, which is a whole nother level of horrifying. But same spot, eliminated the threat, and it starts leaving. Once I see that it's still there and it's still looking at me, that's when I consciously play dead. And I just freeze, and I avert my gaze and wait for it to go back over the ridge so that if it turns and looks at me, it won't see me moving. And I just waited. And I was so happy when I regained consciousness and realized that I was still alive. And then I was just so terrified again to see that bear was still there. And I was just hoping that it would continue going away. And it was really hard to wait.
I'm trying to visualize this. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard to visualize this when you've heard stories about people playing dead and all this stuff, but I'm sitting 2 feet from somebody who literally is walking us through this. It's pretty amazing to just sit here and listen to you talk about this and how quick you could process things.
Yeah. I feel really lucky that that's how my physiology worked in this situation, because we talked about some of the other ways that your brain can just leave you high and dry.
Sure.
So I was really glad that I had that presence of mind throughout, really, except for the unconscious portion.
Yeah. So he starts moving away.
Yeah.
I read that he glances back at you,
Yeah.
but keeps moving away.
Yeah.
And what I'm taking into this is that he's that's not a threat anymore,
Right. Exactly.
and keeps going.
Yeah.
Where are you on the pain scale at this point?
At this point, I'm happily back at 0.
Okay.
I don't feel anything right then. I mean, like you're saying, my senses are still coming back. My adrenaline is masking the pain as well. I'm not actually moving the injury. So at this point, all of my focus is on the threat to me that's still there. and then, still trying to get out of this situation. So I play dead until it goes back over the ridge, and I do that, excruciating wait until it's down far enough so that if I stand up completely, it wouldn't be able to see me.
Sure.
And this whole time, I mean, I can feel that things are wrong, but I can't. It's not like as present as the original bite, and it's not as bad as it gets later. But I wait for the bear. I start getting up, and I feel my leg, and I realize that it's wet. I'm like, oh no, that's blood, and that's a lot of blood. And I looked at my hand, and it wasn't blood; it was bear saliva, all gooey between my fingers, and that was really exciting that it wasn't blood.
And no bacteria there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like exactly. Bear mouths are not exactly the cleanest. They don't have the best dental hygiene.
You're not bleeding out.
Right. It's not. I'm not spraying, arterial spray. But regardless, I need to get back to camp. I mean, I didn't have a tourniquet or anything. It'd be a very hard location to place a tourniquet anyway. Even if I had one, that'd be a wound packing situation. But I knew I had to get back to camp because of what had just happened, and I knew I had to get back there before my adrenaline rush wore off. Because, like I said, I could feel that things were wrong, and I knew that I couldn't feel what was actually happening, and I worried that if I didn't get back there, I'd be crawling or dragging or who knows what. I wouldn't be able to keep running. So I started back, and that was 200 yards away as the crow flies, and the last 50 were 100 vertical feet down. That's that ridge that had taken me 10 minutes to scramble up. And the whole time I'm going back there, I'm trying to be silent because, again, I don't want the bear to realize that I'm back in the fight.
Yeah.
Not that I actually would have been capable of fighting at all. But trying to silently get back there, not give myself away, and just the whole while hoping against hope that I was heading the right direction, that I was actually, had my bearings enough that I was going towards the group and to camp.
And you did.
And I did. I got to the top of the ridge, and I looked down, and there's the tents, and there's the guys, and that's where help was. So if I yelled at that point, I wouldn't be alone anymore.
So how close were you before they figured out that you were screaming and yelling and you weren't just saying, hey, I got a great picture?
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, he picked up his camera and brought it back with him.
Yeah. I don't want to send anyone back up there. That was just like,
You're a heck of a nice guy.
Yeah. What's more odd is that I picked up the summer reading book that had fallen out of my pocket.
That's right.
Camera makes more sense. There's a certain amount of, investment there.
Yeah, this is all subconscious going on.
Oh yeah. I'm just like, grab your things and go, so yeah.
So now
I'll
you're
grab my
close to
camera.
camp, you're screaming and yelling.
Yep.
How close are you before they realize it?
Well, so I was at the top of the ridge when I yelled to them, and I said, "Bear," and they didn't necessarily believe me at first. It had been just a few minutes. They'd just been up there at the spot where you can see everything, except for wherever the bear was.
Alex, we're not supposed to mess around.
Yeah, don't joke about this. They thought I was fibbing, and one of the guys turned towards Dan and said, "I think he's serious." And they exploded out of the tent. At this point, I'm maybe, I don't know, a third of the way down the ridge, because I was, after yelling and swearing a few times, I was like, whatever, I don't care. I'm coming down. Whatever they think, I need to get to the bottom of this ridge, because I'm injured. I know that I'm not kidding, and they can help me. Dan was, as part of being a guide, with Minogen, you have to have a wilderness first responder certification, which is kind of like one step below an EMT, and it's specialized towards wilderness medicine, where you're at least 2 hours away from definitive care. And although you're not typically training for a bear attack victim, that's the type of situation that you are training for. Just this unknown.
2 hours, not 200 miles.
Yeah, well, 2+. Okay. It applies anytime there's more than 2 hours. So we certainly were within that scope.
So you're coming down the ridge. These guys finally realize, oh boy, he's not messing around here.
Yep.
Did you chunk your toes up on the way down the ridge?
I don't know how I injured my toes, but as I was running down, I was wearing Chacos, which are, excellent bear fighting footwear, apparently. Rather gladiatorial, I suppose. And my right leg is the one that it bit, and then my left foot was covered in blood, and I had no idea where it was coming from. And I was just like seeing more every step and not sure what the source was. And so I was like, well, I guess we'll figure that out. And I don't know if it was claws or granite or who knows what, but yeah, they were bleeding quite a bit. And as I'm running down, I'm thinking about Dan and you know, that he's going to need to know what's going on to start triaging my wounds and everything. And I was like, I got attacked by a bear and I got hit in the face. Now if I'm cut and I got bit in the thigh and there's blood on my foot for some reason. And I don't know why. Just this like string
All
of,
at once. He's got the whole gig now.
yeah. It's like, you know, we talk about having clarity of mind. That's a pretty good little laundry list of what's going on. Yeah, and Dan came up and met me a few feet or like a little ways up from the bottom, and Buddy carried me down because at this point I couldn't move my leg anymore. As I was going down, my adrenaline rush was just waning and my leg was screaming at me, and it got to the point where I couldn't move that leg anymore with my leg muscles. It was just excruciating, and so I was using my arms to move my leg until he reached me, and then Buddy carried me down, and by this point, you know, the guys had come up with the bear spray and the bear poppers and the med kit and my sleeping pad, and so he laid me down and started doing, you know, the head to toe exam, which before he did that, it was really important to find out where the bear was, because one of the things you need to do is make sure that there's no longer a threat.
Sure.
And so he was asking me where the bear was, which I didn't know. And I was like, felt like I was getting questions wrong. And finally, you know, established that the bear was running away in the opposite direction. And so then he could focus on, you know, my injuries and checking out, you know, everything that was going on, and working to stop the bleeding and bandage the wounds and everything. And so that bite was the worst of the injuries. One of the canines went in a 1/4 inch from my femoral artery, which if it had hit that, it would have
been the spurter.
Yep, that would have meant about, you know, 3 minutes before I died from volume shock.
So let's fast forward a little bit. Yeah. So now you end up with a lot of, you know, obviously the canines went in, they bandage up your toes on the other foot.
Yep.
They triage your ear, the scratches on your back. The big one is on your right thigh, hip.
Yep.
But there's a lot of damage just from the pure power of this jaw coming down on your body.
Yep. Yeah. They're
And as we read along in the book, it's probably more that harmed you than the canines, how deep they went and all that. You started getting infection.
Yeah.
Dan is doing these checks multiple times a day. Dan's calling camp. Camp did an unbelievable job of getting all the proper people involved, doctors. Your mom and dad get a phone call.
Yeah, very, very early on.
Hi, just calling to say that Alex is okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're not calling me because they finished this quick. What's going on? But
Yeah.
they were very open and honest with your parents, and
Yeah.
your parents said, we're going to trust the experts.
Yep.
Whether we immediately get you life flighted out, whether we see how it goes, and we're going to trust the professionals to do what the professionals do at this point.
Yeah.
And Dan, obviously, you must have a real great relationship with Dan because he seems to have taken excellent care of you for being triaged in the middle of nowhere.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, Dan, I mean, I just echo everything that you just said. You know, Dan, Camp, my parents, everybody just handled it really well. You know, and one of the things that we ran into right off the bat was that a helicopter wasn't available. So then it's like you go from a more standard rescue to like a high risk rescue situation. And with all the combination of you know, Dan's expertise and talking to medical control and everything, we were able to stabilize me really, really well on trail, and then you know, monitor this anticipated problem list of all the different things like infection and PTSD and compartment syndrome and other, things from crush injuries and everything.
So this goes on. Now they have to get you out of there. Oh, by the way, folks, and I wish we would have talked about this, but I know we're going long because this is just so epic, is these guys lost a canoe. So they're down to 2 canoes. One of their canoes blew away in a storm at night a couple nights before this.
Oh my gosh. No, a couple nights after this.
After, that's right. After, because, yes. And
Yeah.
so they spend a day where guys go looking for this lost canoe. They do find some of the gear,
Yep.
food. It
Yeah.
wasn't destroyed, so
Yeah.
we're in good shape there. But you're still injured bad.
Yep.
That's the whole trip has changed now.
Yep.
The trip is we got to get Alex out. We got to get Alex out safely. We got to hightail it to get him out.
Yep.
But we need to also take care of him while we're doing this. And now we're down to 2 canoes.
Yep.
And it's not like it's super comfortable for you to be moving around.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was lucky in that I was able to figure out which muscle groups I couldn't move. So I was able to like hobble around a little bit and the guys just did such a great job of, pulling the extra weight, and that canoe getting lost was just during this epic storm. I actually a few years ago found some historical satellite footage of this storm that we were stuck in. The tundra is kind of a desert and there's not a ton of rain, but it rained nonstop for 3 days when we were there, and that's what how we ended up losing the canoe was just this water level rose up during this storm, and then we ended up it ended up blowing up and floating away, and it was while we were stuck in this storm that things kind of took a turn as far as the injury went, and
So infection starts
yep.
doing its ugly thing.
Yeah, and we had antibiotics with us, and we started treating it, and it grew resistant to those, and at that point, that's when the switch gets flipped, and it's we're calling a helicopter again once the storm clears. So,
Folks, if you want more of the details on all of this,
There's a lot.
There's a ton. We could be here for a week. You need to buy the 29th day because we're missing a lot. And it's like, I want to keep going and going, but they need to just buy the book.
Yeah.
And you've also done a voice version of the book.
yep.
So let's fast forward a little bit for
Yeah.
everyone. So you make it to the point where and there's a decision made that somebody has to go with you.
Yep.
And obviously, this is going to be a buddy for life who
Yep.
says, "I'm gonna end my trip and go with you, buddy,
Yeah.
and we're getting you out of here and we're getting you to care."
Yeah. Yeah, and they said, "Oh, so who's gonna go with you?" And so I said, "Well, Mike or Augie," and Dan went and talked to the guys, and Mike stepped up to the plate and took on that role, and I couldn't have asked for a better trip mate and companion to go along on all the stuff that happened after that, helicopter ride and going to Baker Lake and down to Winnipeg, and yeah.
How long were you in the hospital in Baker Lake? Then how long were you in the hospital in Winnipeg?
Yeah, so Baker Lake's a pretty small town with a small medical center, so they had capacity to take care of me for about 12 hours. I needed a lot of IV antibiotics and post-exposure rabies shots and things like that, and they had a finite amount of supplies, and they wanted to have me in a larger facility for if things didn't go well. So after 12 hours, I went down to Winnipeg, and then
That's a long way.
yeah.
How long of a flight was that?
I don't know. It's one of those flights that goes up and down every hour. So it's like you're in a train. There's like a stop at every little tiny town along Hudson Bay there. But yeah, it's a long journey. And made our way down to Winnipeg, and my parents actually picked us up there. They had the opportunity to do that, which was really cool. And spent about 16 hours in the emergency department at Winnipeg Health Sciences Center. And they were able to do everything that needed to happen there. I didn't have to become an inpatient there. So
Okay.
I got more IV antibiotics, and then got sent home with, a bunch of horse pills.
So 7 hour drive back to the Twin Cities.
Yeah, we actually went back to camp.
You did?
Yeah, so we went back to Manojin via Grand Marais Hospital. So I checked in at a couple hospitals on the way to get dressing changes. And then the health officer at that point at camp was a nurse and had, instructions on how to continue my care and continue my post-exposure rabies series.
Fun.
Yeah. Which back then I think it was 7 separate injection times over the course of however many weeks. So
So
I think it's down to 3 now.
So
It used to be 21.
you make it back to camp.
Yep.
You heal up.
Yep.
You start your senior year of high school.
Yep.
Everyone gets a paper. What'd you do over the summer?
Yeah.
You win the blue ribbon.
I guess.
Let's look at long term now. This is quite a few years ago.
Yeah.
Any things that are haunting you this many years later, or any issues?
Yeah, that's a good question. So physically, I healed up pretty quickly. It was 2 months after the attack that I didn't have to put on a Band-Aid anymore. So that was nice. And then I had some range of motion issues that resolved after some PT about a year later. So I got back my full range of motion and pretty much the same strength. So I feel some lingering pain if I don't, if I sit in one spot for too long. So I just got to keep moving. Overcoming the kind of psychological aspect took a lot longer. I knew that this had the potential to keep me from going outdoors and from exploring the wilderness. And I knew that that's something that I wanted to overcome, to figure out how to deal with that. And so I was really, again, fortunate that my family was really supportive. My friends were really supportive. And I was able to go into the backcountry, in controlled situations, and kind of build up that comfort level, starting out with a cabin. And then, the next year we were going to the Boundary Waters and I looked like Rambo with a tactical vest and bear spray and a machete and all kinds of useful things. But just all
what's wrong with that guy?
Are you paranoid? Well, yeah, I just don't, no repeats.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
People kind of look at you funny, but I needed those at first, in addition to the support of the people around me, to get back out there. And I was gradually able to peel those layers away to the point where I'm able to operate in the woods comfortably, and I was able to
That's awesome.
go back to really fortunate and grateful that that's the case. I was able to go back to Manojin and work there for a few years, guiding trips and working as an in-camp staff, and then when I was no longer at camp anymore, able to put those skills to use with the St. Louis County Rescue Squad here in northern Minnesota, doing search and rescue in the Duluth area, Lake Superior, all the way up into the Boundary Waters. So helping other people out when they're in a jam, and putting my experiences to use.
Putting your experience to use where you can help calm them down instead of coming up and going, holy crap, you look like hell.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. That's part of it. Part of it's, keeping a calm scene.
Wow.
So, yeah.
This is unbelievable.
Pretty fortunate.
And you've done good things. You've been back to the Boundary Waters.
Yep.
Any bear experiences in the Boundary Waters since then? Any bears in camp with the bags hanging, whatever?
I have not. I've had, lots of sites where you see plenty of bear signs.
Sure.
One of my big things with bear safety is preparation. And of course there's some problem bears, and there's some problem bears this summer. But the biggest way to ensure that you and the bears are safe is to, ensure that you're storing your food properly, not mixing sleeping areas with food, and making sure that the bears can't get it, because once they do associate people with
Come
food,
on, they're
it's
black
bad.
bears. They got nothing on you. It's like, really? Is that all you got? No. It's a serious subject. It really is. We're laughing because, what you went through and survived and can tell the story, but it's a serious subject, and people need to be smart about it, and just really use common sense, and sometimes stuff happens.
Yeah.
Out there and whatnot. But this is
Yeah.
we're so happy that everything is good.
Me too.
Yeah, probably a lot more than us, right, Alex? But thank you for sharing your story with
You're
us,
welcome.
your story with everyone. Everyone, you know what? Come on. The 29th day. A lot of places you can buy it. I know a couple. One's DuluthPack.com. One is the Duluth Pack store, which is our flagship store. But there's a lot of places you can buy this book. I can tell you, I couldn't put it down. And I'm not saying it because I'm interviewing it, because my whole staff knows about it. And a whole bunch of them want this book from me now. And it's like, no, you cheapskates. I bought it. Go
Get
buy
your own.
one. Yeah, exactly. But thank you for signing it. Thank you for being here. This is unbelievable. First person I've ever met that's been mauled by a grizzly bear and can sit and laugh about it. And, it's interesting because Alex and I have been at trade shows where there's adventurers that come and they get on stage and they tell their story and all these things. And I asked Alex the other day when we were talking, I said, do you ever feel like yelling out? And it's like, yeah, but you haven't been mauled by a grizzly bear. Big deal. You climbed, a big mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I survived a grizzly bear. No, they're all awesome stories. They're all great on their own. But I've always thought that since the book and since we talked and I found out all these years I didn't know that you had been, it's like, I know you don't go around telling people, hey, you know what, nice to meet you. I've been mauled by a grizzly bear.
Yeah.
But I mean, oh my gosh, this
Not
is
until now, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm not going to sleep tonight. No, I'm going to be having grizzly bears in my mind. But thank you so much. We appreciate all your time. Folks, support it. The 29th Day. It is a great read. It's a great book. You can visualize all this. And he is an awesome human being. This is great. Alex, thank you.
Thank you, Tom. It's been a lot of fun being on here, so I appreciate it.
We appreciate you being here. And folks, until next time, unplug from the indoors and recharge in the outdoors.